Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into one of the most concerning geopolitical shifts happening quietly but rapidly, the slow erosion of Russia's control over its Far East. As the war in Ukraine drains Moscow's resources and attention, China and North Korea are moving in economically, strategically, and even demographically. The Far East, a region rich in natural resources and crucial to Russia's access to the Pacific, is slowly slipping away from Putin's grip and falling into the hands of Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un. For decades, Russia's Far East has been a neglected frontier. Stretching from Siberia to the Pacific, this region is massive but sparsely populated. Only about 6 million people live across a territory that makes up 1/3 of Russia's total land area. Meanwhile, just across the border, over 100 million Chinese live in northeastern China. This demographic imbalance has always made Moscow nervous. But now, with Russia's economy struggling under sanctions and its military bogged down in Ukraine, Beijing is quietly expanding its influence through trade, migration, and strategic deals that strengthen China's foothold in the region. In the last few years, China has become Russia's lifeline. After being cut off from Western markets, Moscow turned to Beijing for everything from technology and banking systems to machinery and consumer goods. This dependence has given China unprecedented leverage over Russia. Beijing knows it, and it's using that leverage to expand its reach into the Russian Far East. Chinese companies are buying up mining rights, leasing vast areas of farmland, and investing in infrastructure that connects the region more to China than to Moscow. In many towns, Chinese businesses dominate local economies, while Russian authorities look the other way, desperate for investment and cash flow. But it's not just about economics, it's about power. Beijing is building soft control over the region through people, trade, and influence. In cities like Vladivostok, once proudly Russian, Chinese, language signs are becoming common. Trade fairs and cultural exchanges have been booming, with Chinese workers and students increasingly present. What started as economic cooperation has quietly become a process of integration, one where the Far East is being absorbed into China's economic and cultural orbit. Vladivostok itself is a sensitive symbol. Once part of China's Qing Empire, it was ceded to Russia in the 19th century under what Beijing calls unequal treaties. For decades, China accepted those borders. But now, under Xi Jinping's nationalist revival and rejuvenation of the Chinese nation, old territorial memories are returning. While Beijing hasn't officially challenged Russia's control, the narrative is subtly shifting. Chinese media and netizens increasingly refer to Vladivostok by its old Chinese name Haitian. Why? And maps circulating online quietly label it as historically Chinese territory. This cultural framing is part of a long game, one that doesn't require an invasion, just gradual dominance. At the same time, North Korea is stepping into the picture. Kim Jong-un's recent visits to Russia's Far East and meetings with Vladimir Putin have signaled something big. Pyongyang, once isolated, now finds itself in a position of leverage. As Russia struggles to produce enough ammunition for its war in Ukraine, it has turned to North Korea for weapons. In exchange, Russia is offering food, energy, and advanced military technology. But beyond the weapons trade, something deeper is emerging, a strategic alignment that's giving Pyongyang more freedom to act and more regional influence than it's had in decades. Kim's interest in the Far East isn't just symbolic. North Korean laborers, long banned from working abroad under UN sanctions, are quietly returning to Russian construction sites and logging camps. Reports suggest that Moscow has allowed thousands of North Koreans to enter the region to help fill labor shortages, especially as many Russian men have been mobilized for war. This arrangement benefits both sides. Russia gets cheap, disciplined workers, and North Korea gets hard currency and political goodwill. But it also means that Pyongyang is embedding itself into the region's economic fabric alongside China. So while Moscow still formally controls the Far East, its grip is loosening. On paper, it remains Russian territory, but in reality, power is slowly shifting. Economically, the region now depends more on trade with China and North Korea than with Moscow. Politically, local governors and businessmen are aligning themselves with Chinese partners who bring money and development. Militarily, Russia has redeployed thousands of troops westward to fight in Ukraine, leaving the Far East lightly defended. Even the Pacific Fleet, once a symbol of Russian strength in Asia, has been stripped of ships and resources for the war effort. This is exactly the kind of opportunity Beijing and Pyongyang have been waiting for. China has already begun integrating the Russian Far East into its Belt and Road Initiative, building trade corridors and pipelines that run directly from China into Siberia and Primorsky Krai. These projects are billed as mutually beneficial, but the long-term effects are clear. They make the region economically dependent on China. Once you rely on Chinese financing, Chinese technology, and Chinese markets, your autonomy becomes an illusion. Even the local population feels the shift. Many residents of the Russian Far East complain that Moscow has abandoned them. Infrastructure is crumbling, wages are low, and investment from Moscow is minimal. By contrast, Chinese projects bring jobs, roads, and goods. The resentment toward the Kremlin is growing quietly, while admiration for China's efficiency and prosperity increases. It's a subtle but powerful transformation, one that happens from within, not through conquest. Putin knows this dynamic is dangerous, but he has little choice. Russia's economy can no longer sustain massive development projects in the Far East. Western investors are gone, and domestic companies are overstretched. The Kremlin desperately needs Beijing's financial and technological support. So even if Moscow understands that it's becoming a junior partner to China, it has no alternative. That dependency gives Xi Jinping near-total leverage over Putin. When Beijing wants more access to Arctic shipping routes or more influence over energy projects, Moscow can hardly say no. Meanwhile, North Korea's partnership with Russia is transforming the balance of power in Northeast Asia. Pyongyang's military industries, long isolated, are now being revived by Russian demand. In exchange, Moscow provides advanced missile and satellite technologies that bolster Kim Jong-un's ambitions. This cooperation not only strengthens North Korea's capabilities, but also gives it a stronger foothold in the region, especially across the border zones where North Korean labor and influence are growing. What we're witnessing is the quiet reordering of the Russian Far East, not through invasion, but through absorption. China and North Korea are filling the vacuum that Moscow's weakness has created. Step by step, they are embedding their economies, people, and influence so deeply into the region that it will be impossible to reverse. By the time the Kremlin realizes how much control it has lost, it may already be too late. There's a deep irony in this situation. For decades, Putin portrayed himself as a restorer of Russian greatness, a defender of sovereignty, and a challenger to Western dominance. But now his war in Ukraine has forced him to depend entirely on the goodwill of two authoritarian allies, China and North Korea. In trying to build a multipolar world, Putin has reduced Russia to a vassal state in the new Asian order dominated by Beijing. China's ambitions go far beyond trade. Control over the Russian Far East would give it enormous strategic advantages, access to vast resources, greater influence in the Arctic, and an expanded Pacific coastline. For Beijing, this is part of its long-term vision of regional dominance, a step toward reshaping the geopolitical map of Eurasia. And while it may not involve direct annexation, the result could be the same: effective control over the region's economy and politics without firing a single shot. Russia's vulnerability is now on full display. The Kremlin's decision to prioritize the war in Ukraine has drained its military and economic strength, leaving the Far East exposed. China and North Korea, both careful and patient players, are capitalizing on that weakness. For Xi, it's a golden opportunity to expand China's sphere of influence. For Kim, it's a chance to break out of isolation and gain strategic depth. For Putin, it's a slow-motion lost one that can't be fixed with propaganda or military power. The consequences of this shift are profound. In the coming years, we may see the Russian Far East function more like a Chinese satellite zone than a part of Russia. Trade, culture, and governance will increasingly align with Beijing's interests. Chinese language education will grow. Local elites will depend on Chinese investments, and if Moscow ever tries to reassert control, it will face economic backlash and possible unrest. The transformation is already underway, slow, steady, and seemingly unstoppable. So, as Putin focuses on his war with the West, the East is quietly slipping away. What was once Russia's proud Pacific frontier is becoming part of a new power network centered on Beijing and Pyongyang. And the most striking part, it's happening without tanks, without battles, just through influence, economics, and time. This is the real story behind the headlines: how Russia's Far East is falling into the hands of Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un, while Putin, the man who promised to make Russia great again, can only watch it happen. The question now isn't whether the Far East will remain under Moscow's control, but how much longer it can hold on before it becomes something else entirely. Thank you for watching. If you found this analysis insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into global power shifts. The world is changing fast, and we're here to help you understand what's really going on behind the scenes.